My paranormal experiences probably began when I was around 6 years old. My paranormal experiences began approximately when I was 6 years old. It might have even been sooner, depending on how you define paranormal. I was born in the city of Toronto. My mother is First Nations, which is Native American, and my father is Italian. Some of that is relevant, some of it really isn't. But I remember being 6 in the city, and actually even before then, if we want to kind of touch base on what is paranormal and what isn't. The very first dream I even would have memories of was almost kind of dreaming of, I don't even want to say fantasy worlds, but just like kind of places where I, as a kid, never have been. And just, it seemed, I guess fantasies, like I've far either a super distant future or a super distant past, and I was a part of it. And this will maybe make sense later down the road because I learned a lot of things about a lot of stuff about spirit and potentially past lives and stuff like this. But maybe this was the very beginning of experiencing what could have been a past life, and I had no idea. I just remember it was a reoccurring dream, just places that are almost like fantasy in terms of like a world where I never have been. Like, and I don't know how to describe it, and I don't know if it has any significance to paranormal activity, but that's kind of where it really began. And I may have been even younger than 6, but really where things started to change was when I was 6, or maybe even just a touch older than that. I remember having lots of troubles at nighttime, like just being really protective for some reason and just wanting to protect my sides of my body and always sleeping in a way where I felt defensive. And I didn't really have a real reason why. I mean, just I felt I needed to. And at that time, my parents were into real estate, and they bought a home in the country about an hour and a half east of Toronto. And it was a country home that later turned into our actual permanent residence. But before then, we would just use it as like a country home to visit and kind of just spend some time in. And, when we would go up there, a lot of the times I have a younger brother, and he's 2 years younger than me. But, we shared a room at the time because we were just little kids. And when we go up there would just be times that I recall just feeling really scared at night. And then sometimes in the morning, I'd wake up on the opposite side of the bed, like not opposite, but like facing the opposite direction of where my pillow would be. And that happened quite a bit. And, that's kind of really the first weird thing. It's just that would happen often. And as time went on, we would keep going up there, and just weird stuff would happen all the time up there. Just that kind of a thing, like waking up upside down and, always wanting to keep the curtains closed. And I just hated at night things looking in the window, like the feeling of something looking in the window. I just didn't like that. I always put pillows on the windows when I was downstairs, like in the basement area, because it's like a semi-finished basement. Just things like that. That was just the beginning of like something I didn't understand at the time, being like 6 or 8, but that's kind of where that started. And I do recall like maybe it was becoming 10 at this point. I was maybe 10, and it still wasn't our permanent home just yet, but it was getting close to that point. But it was a summer that we stayed up there all summer. And I remember I would start to see kind of like really, really, really bright light outside the window. And this was at night. And it happened, I could recall maybe 2 or 3 distinct times, just really bright light outside the window at night when I'm sleeping. And I feel that, always feeling super scared. And my brother and I were just watching shows, and, one of the shows that we kind of were fond of, but not fond of, because it just provoked a sense of terror, was the show called Sightings. And it talked about paranormal stuff, and a lot of the stuff was about aliens. And every time they would show like a picture of that classic, kind of like the great alien, just terror kind of came over me. And maybe that's a natural response for a kid, but for some reason there's something about that. And there was one or two kind of shots of a particular way they looked. They didn't all look the same in every episode, but one in particular was the one that did it for me, that really got me. And again, later in that summer, just weird stuff. I remember waking up one night, or not one night, but in the morning, and I was kind of just scratching my leg. And I think I was like 10 years old, something like that. I scratched my leg, and I felt my shin, and there felt like there was almost like a piece of rice stuck underneath my skin, like on my like embedded into my shin. And I was kind of picking at it, and I thought I could kind of pick it out. I didn't even know what it was. I was feeling and I still have the mark on my leg, and consequently later, even like when I was in my 30s, I had another one on my leg just 2 inches away from it. I don't want to go too far into the story, but yeah, I felt this as a kid, and I was never one to really talk too much about my parents. It was stuff that happened to me. Like if I got hurt, I never went to them for anything like that. So I didn't know what this was. I tried to pick it out, and it actually hurt. Like I moved when I moved, I could shift it a slight bit. It was like half in my shin, half underneath the skin, where I could still feel it, slightly move it around, but it just felt like a little grain of rice. That's all it was, and I didn't know what it was, and I didn't overly think about it, and I didn't connect any dots at the time what this could be. But that was the first real weird thing that I felt on me, physically on me. And so, yeah, as time went on, we permanently moved out of the city of Toronto, and this is like early 90s, like 92, something like that. So now this place that all this weird stuff is happening is now like our permanent home. And yeah, it's just the weird stuff continued. I remember one night hearing the humongous bang on the side of the house. Like it woke up everyone. And I don't remember why, but my parents were freaking out. They were really scared. My mom was going down. We had 2 dogs that were just going crazy barking. And my mom just told me it was like lightning or something that struck the house, but it was not lightning. There was just something smashed the house, and I don't even know what it was. And my mom always kind of, because she's native, she always kind of like knew more than what she'd want to tell me. And there was stuff later down the road that she told me too, and really shook me up a lot. But yeah, weird stuff like that all the time. Weird lights outside. And so now that I'm staying at this place full time as a permanent residence, I'm I'm in a new school. I'm making new friends and stuff, and I make some dear friends that I still am in touch with now and still friends with. And I went to a sleepover when I was in grade 7 at one of my good friends' house, and there was 4 of us. And while we're out there, we're just basically sleeping in a tent outside of his house. We set up a tent, and this is the 4 of us kids goofing around. I think we're like in grade 8, grade 7, something like that. I remember we all saw it, and we were I was looking at it for a while, but it looked like a dimly lit light bulb that was kind of far in the distance, but the way it was, how far it was, and the way it was positioned, because he lived on a farm. And I kind of, in a way, it was where I lived was kind of like a farm. It was butted up against like a cow pasture, and it was 10 acres or 11 acres of like forest, but it was partially a farm. But where he lived actually was a farm. So, like I said, it looked like a dimly lit light bulb. It just looked like a light bulb that was on a fence post. And just the way it was positioned, that's all I thought it was. It was just a light bulb on his fence post that was just there. And it just stayed there for like an hour. It was like, it was nonchalant. I didn't even think anything of it until it started to move. And we were all watching it. And it started to move, and I guess it was pretty far in the distance. And from his house to where my house was maybe a 15, 20-minute drive approximately. But how this thing was going was actually going in the direction of where my house would have been. And I'm not saying that it actually went to my house, but it's going in that direction. And I can kind of tell because from his place, it's kind of a hill, and you can kind of overlook the landscape where I could see noticeable, like, the landscape traits that would indicate close to my place. So we're watching this kind of light bulb color, like dimly lit 40-watt light bulb thing floating over the air. And it was really far away. I mean, we're talking miles away, like 15 miles away approximately, but it was still very visible. And like, it was that tone of color, like a dimly lit light bulb. And it started to hover, then it stopped. And it stopped over the forest where my place, technically the direction of where it would have been. And again, I can't say that it was the place, but that very direction, like pretty much right there. And then it was just hovering there for a while. And we were just watching this. And then what scared the bejesus out of us was that it shot a light down. Like there was like a bright light though. Like it was it was a light on its own, but it shot a bright light down into a forested area, and we freaked out. And we were just going nuts. We ran inside his parents' house. Yeah, we just stayed the night inside there, but we were all talking about it, and that was something. That was probably the first time I actually visibly saw what I guess you would consider a UFO. There's nothing else I would consider it. It literally was what it was, and floating in the same spot, hovering over, stopping, floating and hovering, and shooting a light down into a forest. I don't know what it did. I have no knowledge of what else it did. We didn't see it after the fact because we were inside, but that was the beginning of visibly seeing something. Now, my little brother also had, I don't think to the same extent as me, but later when we were a little bit older, I mean, more into our teens, I remember him saying one day out of nowhere, and it was just out of nowhere, he just came up to me and said, "Hey, Ron, you know, I remember years ago, you had this." Like maybe he wasn't teens, but he was maybe 12, and I was already 14 or 15. He was 13. But he said, "Yeah, I remember you. One night I went downstairs to get a drink of water, and you were downstairs in the kitchen already. But you're standing there with your weird little friends. Your weird friends were there with you. Your little weird friends." He just looked at me weird, and I didn't know. I didn't know what he meant, and I even asked him later, like not even long ago. I asked him again, like, "Hey, do you remember me telling you this?" He's like, "Yeah." Like, "What do you mean, little weird friends?" And he goes, "I don't know. Like, it just, I don't." He said he's like, "I can't remember everything now at this point." He didn't want to talk about it, but I just remember him saying, "I remember going downstairs and you were standing there in the kitchen in the dark, and you were standing there with your little weird friends." And I don't have any memory of that, but that's what he said he saw me doing, and so that was odd. And at this point now, I'm starting to kind of not connect dots really, but things are starting to happen where stuff I'm seeing, stuff I'm hearing. I mean, weird stuff at night, being really afraid, and seeing images that really trigger terror, and just just my brother saying this stuff, and waking upside down when I was a younger kid, like upside down, opposite head in the bed. And this is relevant because later down the road, this starts to happen to my daughter, and the same stuff. And I would have to say that from the mid-teens on, not much really happened, at least not much that I was consciously aware of. But there was a point in time, I mean, if we're going to go into paranormal, this particular house was a magnet of something. I mean, whether it was the house or me or whoever's there or whoever was there, without question, this was like a hot spot. And just this general area that I'm in is a hot spot because it seems to follow me, or it's around here, and there's lots of stuff. But yeah, it's just not too much happened. But I remember when I was maybe 19, I still have the same friends because we're dear close friends, and we're at my house, or my parents are there. They're somewhere, I don't know where, down watching a show or something. But I was with my other two buddies, and we're in our kitchen, the same kitchen. And my brother said that the weird stuff happened, and we're standing there, and they both look at me really weird. They're like, "Did you feel that?" I'm like, "No." And they said, "Yeah, it just felt like someone just walked right by us. I felt the wind." And they both said it. And they both was like, "Yeah, I just felt the wind. I just felt someone walk right by me." Like, I didn't feel anything. And so that was kind of that was really weird. And my aunt, who visited us before, said that she came and she stayed the night, and then she saw some dark figure standing like in front of her at nighttime. And I don't know what she saw. I'm just relaying kind of what she briefly said, but again, something very odd that happened in this house, and it was just a weird energy. The whole property was just weird. Everything about it was like not right. But I was almost, I don't want to say close to being 19, but a lot of some stuff did die down. I didn't have too many more experiences that were like very dramatic, but there definitely was stuff in store for me. Like beginning of 19 and 20 is when a lot of really, really strange stuff really began to happen. So my parents actually separated when I was the beginning of being 17, and they kind of concluded it when I was just finishing high school, and so my mom left the house with my younger brother and rented a home. I stayed with my father, and yeah, so he was out doing his thing, I guess dating or whatever with that. So I was at home by myself quite a bit, and my friends would come by from time to time. But this was probably the very beginning of what was, without question, like the change of everything. I set my bedroom up in the basement of our house, and it was a finished basement. And I did this during the summertime because it was a lot cooler in the basement. So it was much more relaxing and just a better sleeping experience. So I went to sleep one night during the summer, and I think I was either 19 or 20. It was one of the two. I think I was 19. I went to sleep, and now I can't say this without absolute certainty if this was a dream or if this was not a dream. But what happened while I would just say in a dream-like state, all that I could remember was looking up, and I could see a light that was bright but not bright at the same time. I was looking upwards. There was a light that it kind of wasn't bright, but the color of the light was beige. And in front of the light was these shadows looking like kind of like hovering over my face. And then I remember hearing the wind blowing in my ear, and I woke up, or what I thought was waking up after having what I would consider, like, if you want to call this a dream or not, because it felt very lifelike, and it was a state of mind that was dreamlike, I suppose, but nothing like I've ever had before. So I'm having this experience where it seems like I'm lying on my back with this bright, well, not a bright, it seemed bright, but it wasn't bright to my eyes where it hurt my eyes. And it was like a beige colored light with these shadows in front of my face. And then I wake up and I'm paralyzed. I'm literally paralyzed. I'm looking at my wall, and I know I'm awake because I'm looking at kind of the small gaps, and it was like a wood board wall, and I'm looking at the small gaps, and I'm seeing the vapor barrier behind the wood. And I'm hearing the wind like blowing in my ears, and I just thinking to myself, what's going on? Like I can't move. And I'm hearing like the wind blowing in my ears, and I'm looking at the wall, and I'm like, I can't move. And it just seemed like there was something in the corner of the room with me. And some people might consider this night terrors, but there's other things that's happened since then that's consistent and different. But maybe a night terror is an explanation by a psychologist who doesn't have the experience to relate to explain it. But this is what it felt like, and this is what happened just prior to the wind in my ear thing, is that I'm having this experience where this dreamlike thing is happening. I'm looking up. I see these shadows, like 3 or 4 shadows hovering over my face in front of this light that's kind of beige, but not bright, but is bright. And I'm hearing this wind blowing in my ears when I'm conscious, and I'm looking at the wall, and I just can't move. I'm paralyzed. And it took maybe 15, 20 seconds of this wind thing in my ear, and I can't move. And then all of a sudden I'm able to move. And I was just so scared. I continued to actually not move because I was just too scared. I couldn't like get out of bed and like just go examine what just happened. I was just like, what just happened? I don't understand this. It's just like I'm frozen and in terror after being able to be like released. And that was pretty traumatic. And I didn't talk about that to anyone because no one really understood. And I didn't feel like I was in them. I didn't want to get ridiculed for something like this because they would just say this is just a dream, but it transcended a dream into something else while I'm conscious. And so that was the very beginning of something like that. Now that actually, another thing happened again later on. I mean, I went off on my way to college, and a lot of time passed where nothing happened. Nothing at all. I mean, I still had this thing in my shin that didn't go. That's still there, actually, technically, but now it's kind of dissolved to where it's just nothing, and it's a dark spot. But like I said, I'll catch up to the point where there is another one in my leg. But so yeah, I go off to college and university, and for, I'm out on my own for a couple of years, and then I decided, there's a lot of stuff that happened in my life where I kind of felt like I wanted to come home, and at that point in time, my father actually sold his house, but he had another property, not even far, actually very close by, that he used for semi-commercial purposes, but it had like a couple residential spots that weren't occupied, but were just there that, he just kind of used to relax at some points in time. And so I was able to stay in this place. And this actually used to be an old ski hill. And, I was familiar with it because I actually did go skiing there prior to him purchasing this place. This is when I was like a lot younger, when I was 13 and 14. But since then, it was, he never used it for that purpose, and it began to regrow and it grew in. So the forest is coming back. But this was also, whether it's the same area, I mean, this was just 4 miles away from where this house that he sold, that all this stuff was happening. So it's right down the road, more or less. Visible, actually, if you look out in a particular area, you can see this particular ski hill thing. So this is now like a kind of a retired ski hill that's starting to regrow back wild. And, he's doing his business, small business out of it, one area of it, but I'm staying in a portion of it. And this is kind of a point in time in my life when, a lot of things kind of went real wrong. Nothing really was working out well for me. And, I did have like part-time jobs, but I was just basically staying at this place for almost 6 years. And I went through so much hardship trying to get out of this position. But while I was in this position, things started to happen again. This was actually a place where there was a horrific accident at the ski hill, and a little girl died because they decided to create a tubing thing, like a tobogganing kind of experience, and some girl tragically lost her life. And this actually comes back way later on in life too. But anyways, I don't want to deter from the story, but again, while I'm at this place, at nighttime, I was doing some work on like sound engineering, because I went to engineering school and was working on a project that I was hired to do. I go to sleep, and a similar dream, where, if you can call it a dream, because the state of mind's not dreamlike. It's dreamy, but not dream-like. It's hard to describe, I suppose, but only this time was that now I'm lying face down, and it feels like I'm on something cold and metal, and everything's super dark except this weird lime green ambient light. And then all I can see something in front of my face now is this kind of like, I want to say a gray looking alien, but it has a very specific look where it's not like overly cliche. I've seen one picture that looked exactly like it, and I've typed it up. It's like almost like mantis alien or something like that, but it's different than like the cliche gray. But this thing was right in my face, like 5 inches away, staring at me. And I just remember the eyeballs. I remember the creases around the eyeballs, but it was the only light was glowing off of it was this weird green ambient light. And the same thing. I wake up, the wind is in my ear, and I'm frozen, paralyzed on the bed. The same thing. And it took like 20, 30 seconds, and I'm trying to mentally move. I can't even move. And then finally something like releases, and I'm able to move. And I just kind of lay there like, I don't know what to do. So that was the second kind of I don't want to say dreamlike experience, but the second distinct thing where it's like kind of like, I guess, an abduction in a sense. I don't want to even start saying it. It's like that's what it was, but now I'm having this second one. It's definitely different than the first. The color of the light's different. I'm visibly seeing I see eyeballs. I see creases. I don't see much other than that. Kind of just like a face. That, or at least that's all my conscious mind can allow me to remember. If there's something that's forcing my mind to not remember or recall, then that's what's happening. But that's what I see. That's what it was. And so time went on. I spent a lot of time at this place, years. I start tracking, hunting. I explore the forest. I almost dive into like a total different realm of understanding the world while I'm at this place. There was certainly cons. I mean, a lot of personal life sucked. A lot of it sucked. I mean, I wish I did things differently, but some benefits were to be had from it. I mean, my level of awareness of everything around me and the world itself was drastically like evolved. Like, and I don't want to make it sound hokey or anything, but it got to the point when I was going out and like meditating, I can actually see like plant aura, like the grass. I remember looking at blades of grass and seeing some like rainbow color stuff outside of the actual blade. Like it got very high to the point where I was like, wow, this is, I don't even know how to describe it. When I would close my eyes, I can see like my hands still, but like energy type of stuff. So like that type of thing was really coming to the forefront where I didn't even want to talk about that. No one knew this was happening to me except me. And this is when I start to actually dive into like, I remember being 20 and visiting my mom at her place with my brother. And I had a hernia surgery. And so I got to stay there and she helped me recover and stuff like that. But there was a book I found in her bookshelf. And I don't know why, because she has a lot of books. She has a lot of books like native traditional stuff. But this one book was what I pulled it out and it like called to me. And if you want to know, it was a book about a man named Billy Meyer in Switzerland and the experiences that he had. So these are like extraterrestrial experiences with like a human-like race of whatever. It's this long story, a lot of details that go into it. But I started diving into this, and it just felt like something unlocked in my mind. Like I just was incredibly drawn to this stuff. Something about this was like the truth to me. Like something about what these things were talking about. And if anyone who knows about what these things are, like I would say the smallest portion of what the guy's experiences are about ETs. It's all spiritual, philosophical. I mean, it's incredibly deep and profound. But this is what I was drawn to. And I was reading this nonstop, spending time in the forest, meditating. I mean, a lot of stuff was coming to me rapidly. I mean, arguably, whether it was useful or not, I mean, not in terms of like a business-esque type of sense, but in terms of just a personal growth sense, it was profound. So time passed, you know, I was able to unlock getting out of this rut of not being able to get out of this place. And, you know, I had great friends that supported me and, you know, not necessarily financially, but helped me motivate me to get me into the world. And it was time. It was time to do this. So I moved back to Toronto, the city of Toronto. And this is the time when I meet my wife, actually. And not too many things paranormal wise actually happened at this point. I mean, I've had all of these weird, arguable abduction experiences, if you want to even call it that. I'm not going to say it is, but I had weird experiences, weird stuff growing up as a kid. I've got this weird thing in my leg that's still there at this point. I mean, it's still there, but a lot of stuff starts to die down again. And, you know, so I get married. We have our first son. We're living in an apartment in middle of Toronto. So it's like a big mega city metropolitan area. And then I start to have these weird dreams that, again, they're dreamlike states, but it's not like the other things. Now it's kind of like I'm outside, I'm looking into the sky, and I feel real scared that I can't stop something from taking me. And there's a sensation that comes tied with it. And it's the same experience, like same, if you want to call it dream. I've had it maybe a dozen or almost 24 times, like since being in the city, the same thing again and again. I'm looking at the stars and now I'm floating in the sky and I have this tremendous terror that I'm being taken and I can't stop anything from happening. It just has to happen and I can't do anything about it, but I know what's about to happen. And that's the feeling I get every time I have this. And I wake up, I don't say nothing to my wife. I don't want her to know because she's not really interested in this stuff. She has very little knowledge of it prior to meeting me. I mean, I did tell her those two experiences when we first met. I don't even know why I told her this. I just felt like this is she's my soulmate, I would have to say. So I told her everything about myself. And if she didn't like anything, then let it be that. But she accepted me for who I was, which is obviously what a good woman should do, I suppose, and likewise, vice versa. So she was very understanding, didn't really care to know more about it because it's not her thing, but she understood. Like she believed me. I wasn't just trying to say it to sound whatever is this craziest thing just to randomly bring up, but I figured I'd just bring up everything and that would be that. But anyway, so long story short, nothing happens for a while except these weird feelings that I'm having at night while in the city. I'm in the city. There's millions of people around me. I mean, but these are the feelings I'm having while I'm still there. I can't escape it. So we have our first son. Our first child is our son, and everything's fine. We end up moving out of the apartment, and we move into a townhouse not far from there, but still a little bit of a drive. But we're still in the city for the most part, and we have our daughter. And this is kind of where things begin to happen again. When she was, I can't even remember how old she was, maybe 3 months, very young still. She was sleeping in her crib. My wife and I were in our bed. We had her in her own room, in her own crib. My son was in his own room. I remember we put her to bed, and I remember waking up and our light was on inside her, like our night light or whatever, nightstand light was on, and our daughter was laying in our bed, but upside down, like her head was sleeping, like facing her feet. And she was just somehow got in there. We didn't know what the heck. I was like, what the? And I was scared because I didn't want her to get suffocated. I thought if I rolled over, I mean, how would I have even known she was even there? And if I had rolled over, I could have suffocated her or whatever, right? I was just parental instinct. I was just scared for her. I didn't want her to get hurt. And we were like, how did she get here? And my wife was like, I don't know how she got here. I didn't put her here. I was like, I didn't put her here. So we're just like, I didn't do it. So none of us knew how she even got there. Like, she was 3 months old. She's not doing nothing. She's not even sitting up at that point. So here's my daughter who's now in her bed. Again, just like myself as a kid, facing upside down. So I don't know what this means. Like, why be put back? What does being put in the bed upside down mean? I don't even know what that means, but that's what she was. And, as, again, time went on and I probably still had more of these sensations, and we ended up having another daughter. So now we have 3 kids, and that's what we have now today. We only have 3 kids, but nothing else happened that in regards to my daughter or any sort of weird stuff like that. But now I brought this up with Vic on another show. I mean, now I'm starting to get to a point in my life where I'm becoming more of an entrepreneur. I'm trying to start a business. And this is a whole story on its own, but I go on, I'm introduced to an elder, a native elder, who's not necessarily old, but, he's a younger guy, but they're referred to as elders because they're wise, they're spiritual, and they're spiritual leaders. So I'm given my spirit name. One thing I didn't mention on the other show because it really wasn't relevant to the experience regarding Sasquatch. I mean, I'll slightly dive into it, but when we were talking, I was telling him everything that happened to me up to this point. I was explaining like my hardships. I was explaining before he gave me the name, he wanted to know more about me. And I was telling him why, like, I was at this place for 6 years almost, maybe even 6 years. I was struggling to break free of being there, but at the same time, like I had this profound like epiphanies of like my mind exploded with like understanding, and I just remember him saying, it's like, I don't know why he said this, like, because when he looks at you, and I've had this with other people who are like, I guess arguably psychic, I feel like I kind of got to protect my thoughts in a way because they might be reading my thoughts. Personally, I get a feeling like this. I could feel something. There's communication going on, but he smokes his pipe and he's looking at me and he's like, there's been other people who've had hardships that have had to go through what you've had to go through. He goes, people like Jesus and people like whoever he said, there's a lot of people he says, like there's people who have to spend their time in isolation. And I don't know why he said that to me, but he said that. And he looked at me weird. And I was just telling him, it's like, yeah, I always find myself coming back to Toronto. And he's like, well, there might be reasons why you have a past life here. And he goes, are you aware of the red-headed giants. I'm like, yeah, I know the red-headed giants. That's a story about giants that were North American, and they had red hair. They're known to be gigantic, like 10, 13 feet tall. He's like, you might be reincarnated from that. I was like, okay. So I'm just trying to relay what he said to me. It's not like I'm trying to come to these personal opinions myself, but he's telling me this stuff. And if we're going to talk about everything, I might as well just talk about everything and let whoever's listening kind of be the judge of whatever they want to feel. But paranormal can be a lot of different things, and a lot of it has to do with like spiritual. It's a spiritual thing. To define what it is, all falls under that banner. And, it's the broader you expand your mind, the further you can see things, and the more clearly you can see things. And the more things that you didn't think were real will show themselves and reveal themselves, because they've always been there. It's just they need to be at a level of your thinking, or beyond thinking, I guess it's what it's referred to actually to see it or experience it. So he's telling me this stuff. I mean, there is something that I personally dove deep into my own spirit prior to this. It might be too much to even bring up, but I'll leave it for another story, I suppose, if I have to. But it's transcending the level of ET stuff, and it might be connected, but I don't really know for sure. But so anyways, he tells me this stuff. I'm introduced to the elder. I go on this fast that was a profound experience all on its own, that had everything to do with like Sasquatch and beyond, other things. Like I said, I had talked to Vic about this, and we did a show and the whole details in that, so I don't need to dive too deep into that. But it is a part of my life that there was tremendous lessons that transcended that. So COVID comes. We move out of Toronto. I just get this feeling right off the bat when it all starts. I'm like, I think we should leave. The city's not going to be the right place for us. This isn't going to be good here. So my father was nice enough. We didn't own a home at that point in time. So he said, well, why don't you come stay at this property that I stayed at prior? It does have like the space that your family would need. You could use it as a launching point until you get a new place. So we were talking, we're like, okay, well, let's do this. Let's take a chance and we'll do this. We'll go to this, we'll go here. So we go there, and, everything's kind of fine for a little bit. I mean, there are stuff that does happen that is tied in with the Sasquatch part, and it's all happening here at this place. But we're going to stick to other paranormal because a lot of this stuff happens here. So while I'm here, I wake up at night, and our bed is facing a window, and the window is also facing looking up the ski hill, and a lot of it's forest. Some of it's kind of just grown in hills because it used to be a ski hill that was groomed, but now trees, like some trees and bushes and stuff, are growing in, but it's growing back wild, but it's still fairly clear. I'm looking up, and the whole sky is kind of like lighting up now. And at the top of the hill, it looks like there's something real, real bright up there. I don't know what it is, and I don't say anything to anyone because everyone's asleep, and I don't want to scare them. But something's real bright. I can't see what it is, but it's casting a huge light. It's real bright, real bright. And I'm just looking at it, and I'm just thinking, what in the heck is going on? What is this? So it's just there. It's not going away anytime soon, and it just stays there. And I'm watching it for like 10, 15 minutes, and finally it fades out. And I was like, what was that? And, I told my wife the next day, and she's like, oh, I have no idea what that was. I didn't hear any four-wheelers. I didn't hear any trucks. There's only one back road access way in, and it's never used. It's rarely used. Like, it's once a season it's used. So, like, I know the area very well. Like I said, I spent 6 years exploring this place. I know it in and out. There shouldn't be anything up there, and there is. And even if there was a truck, like someone went up with a car, it's very easy to tell because my brother's gone camping up there. I've seen him park up there. It was nothing like that. It wasn't like two high beams casting out forward. It was something totally different, and it was like big, pretty big. It was like a 50-foot wide area of light that was bright and was far enough back, like it was in this farm field where I couldn't quite see it. Like it was hiding itself, but not. It was weird. So that happened, and I told my wife, and she's like, yeah, that's pretty weird. And then not even like, there was a rapid fire amount of stuff that happened. And so there was another night we were out on the porch, like looking up at the hill, and at the night there was a moon, and it looked like it was almost like a full moon, but something looked really weird about this thing. The moon didn't look right. There was something really wrong with it. And we were looking at it. I was like, my wife said, "You feel weird?" I'm like, "Yeah, I feel really weird." And we're looking, and then the moon, it looked like the moon started vibrating, and I saw it and she saw it. And I was getting vertigo. I felt vertigo. I was like, I can't even stand up right now. I was holding the railing. I felt like I was going to puke. I was like, I don't know what this is. I'm looking at this thing, and I thought it was the moon. It looked like it could have been it. And there was no clouds. It looked like it was almost like a full moon. And I felt like I was going to throw up. And she did too. She's like, I got to go sit down. Like, I feel really messed up. I'm holding onto the railings. Like, I feel like dizzy, like real dizzy. And we went in, and then we came out, and it was gone. It wasn't even there anymore. And that was weird on its own too. I'm trying to remember if it was there or if it moved or the sensation stopped. But while we were looking at what we thought was the moon, it started vibrating. Like, I just saw it buzzing, like literally with my eyes. Like, it wasn't my eyes shaking. It was like the thing looked like it was vibrating. And then I got real dizzy looking at it. And then, we were only there for maybe like 8 to 10 months. But like, again, I was another night because I had an elderly dog that was 16, so she was on her way out, unfortunately, but I had to take her out every single night, multiple times. So, no, it wasn't overly late this one night. I went out and I was looking at the sky, and as my wife was out there, I was like, "Hey, look!" And I've seen a lot of satellites, and you see a lot of planes at night, and you know what a plane looks like at night. You can see it off in the distance, and when it gets close to you, you hear the jets finally, like when it's moved on. And if you see a satellite, you could track it, and you could watch it going over your head, and you could keep watching, go off in the distance, and it goes a while. But this is something that was really weird, and maybe anyone else who's seen this, like, it's really weird. I was looking up at the sky, and there wasn't clouds or anything. I saw stars and everything. Then all of a sudden, like, I don't want to say it's a portal because I didn't see anything that would resemble a portal, but the best way to describe it, out of an invisible portal, a chain of these glowing lights come out. And it's not like I saw it coming off from the far distance like you would see a satellite or a plane. It's not like it was off on the horizon. It came out of nowhere. And there was like maybe 20 lights in a row, like they're like marching, like a carousel of lights. And then just like how they came out, there was another portal that, I only say portal because that's the only thing I could think of. Like, they warped out of sight, and one by one they would just start warping out of sight. They came out of nowhere and they disappeared out of nowhere. They didn't go far. They didn't cross the horizon. They didn't go anywhere. They just left. They were gone the way they came. It was weird. And we're like, what was that? This place had so much weird stuff happen. Like, and it was all like UFO stuff. It was all and there was a couple weird ghost stuff because my daughter did hear like a kid's voice. Now, I don't want to deter, but we'll stay with the UFO stuff. What else could it be? And then obviously we literally saw it. And it was real close, a UFO. I was on the deck. I was going to take my dog out, I think, or something to do outside. It was nighttime, and I go out on the porch, and the porch is like the ending of a staircase that's going up, and it's leading to the door. So it's like a little 5x5 little area that connects to the entrance of our unit. I'm standing there looking up, and I just see this thing float by, and it's super quiet, and it's got these crazy lights blinking on the bottom, like going in a circle, going do, like underneath it, and it's just hovering there, and it's hovering by. It's going right by it, and it's like, I don't know, 300 feet away, like super low, close. And I just calmly go inside because it kind of didn't even bother me. Like, I didn't feel scared looking at it. I just wanted to show my wife because she wasn't even a UFO person. She's never been a UFO person. Even this is when it all started for her. This is when she really started really believing, because she saw the light stuff and she saw all that stuff. And yeah, that's weird on its own. But it's not Starlink. It's blipping out of nowhere, and it's blipping out of nowhere again. They're all disappearing. And what is this? These aren't satellites. I know the difference. I've spent my time in the country. I see it all the time. But we see this thing, it is, I guess, a UFO. It looked like a disc with weird red lights blinking on the bottom and like going in a circle pattern on the bottom, and didn't make a sound. And I get her and I show her. She's like, "Oh yeah," like she just doesn't even know how to handle it. She's like, "Oh yeah," and she's just kind of internally freaking out. I mean, her whole reality is kind of just breaking on her. I could tell. She kind of had like almost a nervous breakdown, like not nervous breakdown, like a kind of like a mental breakdown, partially because now like everything she didn't think was real is kind of like right in her face. It's right there. And that's just the stuff that happened there. I mean, we even like moved from that place to the place where I'm at right now. We've been here for 3 years, and this is almost even more stuff happening here. I just don't even understand it. We saw the exact, I mean, we live right on a lake, and like we have a lakeside property. And I saw the same chain of light stuff blip out and blip into nothing. And it happened again here. 2 years later, or 2.5 years later, the exact same phenomena. And I've sat out here with my brother-in-law, and we've watched satellites. And like, is that a UFO? I'm like, no. But there was one time that we did see something, and we're just watching. It was like, wow, it's just hovering. And then it was a ball of light, and then it went like just the light just like intensified, like it almost like lit on fire. Like it just like we're like, oh, and it was like, not that it freaked me out, but it's just like, yeah, I could feel it. You know, because right before that, I said in my head, it's like, hey, ants, I don't know why I said this, but I said, hey, ancestors, let me know that you're out there. Show me that you're out there. And sure enough, this thing shows. And, you know, there's just so much stuff. I mean, again, while we're at this place, my daughter, who had the same thing happen when she was a baby, does the same thing again. She ends up in bed with us. She doesn't even know how she got in bed with us. So I'm now concerned that stuff's starting to happen to her because she sees stuff too. And she ended up in bed with me and my wife laying upside down, like on top of her blankets. She doesn't even know how she got there. I don't know how she got there. We didn't hear her come in, and I'm a super light sleeper. I could like wake up from anything. Like and I didn't hear her there. I mean, she just showed up, and it just goes on and on. I mean, this is just the ET stuff. I mean, even at this place, we got a new dog. Our dog unfortunately passed away. We did get a new dog, and he's a large breed dog. And just like there was times when he gets taken, because we have him on a leash outside, because he's kind of like a guard dog-ish breed. But there's been multiple times when he's taken off, unclipped his thing. It's like something's unclipped him, and we just see him kind of sulking. Like my wife saw him sulking away, like something was holding him by the collar, pulling him out. And I mean, the things just go on and on here. And one of the most recent things that's happened to me here was, I remember walking down, because we live on a private, kind of like a dead end road that butts up to the lake. And I was taking my dog out at nighttime, and I was walking back home. And, you know, I was just thinking about the state of the world, and I see this star, like, which now wasn't a star at all, but I see it kind of like hovering over the farm field, and I thought it was a star. I was like, you know what, universe? I'm like, just show me a sign that everything's going to be okay. Just show me a sign that everything's going to work out. And then I'm just kind of looking, because we have like this old TV antenna thing on our house. That's, if anyone knows those old TV antennas, well, I'm just looking at it, just kind of looking at the sky. I'm like, okay, I guess there's no sign. And then out of nowhere, this crazy turquoise greenish light flashes like from that direction where I'm looking, and it flashes, and I feel really weird. Like I just see the flash of light, and it lights up the entire, because we're right next to a farm field. It lights up everything like with a greenish turquoise color light, and I see it light up everything. And I don't know what the heck just happened. Like I feel weird now. I feel like I stepped out of time and I stepped back into time. Like something happened. Like I just feel weird, and my dog's acting weird, and I don't know what happened to me. And I'm just confused at this point. I'm like, what just happened? I feel real weird. Like something happened. I just saw this flash of weird turquoise green light right after I asked for guidance and stuff like that, while looking at this thing that I thought was a star. And every single night after that, this thing's not there. It should be still there. I mean, every other star is in the same pattern, and this isn't there. So this wasn't even a star. And yeah, things still happen with me. I still have these dreams that I'm floating, and even my wife, who was the least believer of this kind of stuff, happened to wake up to get water one night, and this is what she told me, and she couldn't even believe it. And it's almost too weird, too crazy of a thing. But she said she was walking and came out of our window, and our window looks at the lake, and she said at night, I just saw 2 or 3 gray aliens that were there floating above the ground. Like, they're kind of floating, and they're just looking at me. These gray aliens, 3 of them looking into the window, and they're short, and were looking right at me. And it scared me because I'm just like, am I attracting this stuff? Like, what, is it me? Is it me? Like, what's going on? Like, what's happening? And my wife kind of said this the next morning. It scared my daughter, and she drew a picture of these things exactly like my wife saw it. It's like, she went off, she drew a little picture. She said, was it these? And she's like, yeah, that's it. Like, the fingers, like, everything. She said, like, there's these weird fingers, and she drew it exactly. Like, it was really freaky. Like, it's scary because it's nothing I can't do anything about it. It just happens. And I'm content with it in a way, because I just know that there's nothing I could even do. Even if there was something I could do, I couldn't do anything. It just happens. There's no timing. There's no thing. And like I said about the thing in my leg, prior to moving from Toronto, like, I saw another thing on my leg, and I went to go see a dermatologist because I'm like, what is this thing? Like, I'm kind of scared now. I don't know what this is. And I showed her, and I explained to her, I got one of these when I was a kid. It was in the bone, and it's starting to dissolve now. And this one's in my just 2 inches to the side. It's like almost in the shin too. And she said, this is, she goes, this isn't something that an adult your age would get. This would be something that someone in their 60s might develop. It's potentially some kind of, like, not like cancer, but like maybe she didn't know what it was. I didn't get like a biopsy or anything. Maybe I should have, but she's like, this isn't something that someone your age would even have. And I said that I had I got this one right here when I was like 8 or 10. She goes, that I've never heard this ever. Like, this really shouldn't happen. And the one that was originally in my shin that felt like a grain of rice is basically almost dissolved to nothing, but the mark is still there. It's like almost like a purple mark that I have, and the same with the other one. It's still there in my leg. And, it's just, these are just the tip of the iceberg of some of the stuff that's happening, and it just seems all interconnected and in some way, shape, or form. I mean, whether it's ghosts or spirits or ETs and everything and above, it's just like, it just doesn't make any, like, it makes perfect sense. In all honesty, it all makes perfect sense, but to the degree of how it unfolds on an individual level, perhaps it's genetic, perhaps there's something more to it. And, I'm pretty convinced that there's a significant amount of stuff that's hidden from us, probably because it would, quite frankly, liberate people in a way that people would have no idea about. But a lot of it's kept secret, a lot of it's kept hidden, and a lot of it's dangerous. And there's people that would take this real serious to make sure that even good people would be like, something bad would happen to them for sharing that, if they ever had proof or whatever, it's scary, and that is a whole different thing that I don't even want to get involved in. But, this is, in a nutshell, everything that's happened, from being a kid, lights outside, banging on the house, it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And the weirdest, I don't even know why. I mean, I don't want to sound like a complete fool, and I really am just being honest with what I'm saying. I'm not trying to embellish any story with details that I don't have. I'm just trying to say it exactly as it should be and exactly as I remember it with the details I remember. The only thing that was the weirdest part about everything, and there's one thing that I'm kind of withholding because it's complicated in terms of past life stuff. I mean, there's certainly dreams, like I mentioned before, at the very beginning, that there's people have abilities with spirit, and a lot of the real, we're just at the very tip of the iceberg, the very tip. And if people only knew what is inside of their spirit, like the wisdom, the knowledge. I'm a believer in past lives, like reincarnation. Everything follows the same pattern if you observe nature. A cycle of expansion, contraction, like opposite, left, rights, like all of it's the same pattern. And so life comes death, and death comes life. It's the same pattern again and again and again. All meant to expand further and further and further every single time. So what I'm kind of getting at, maybe the last of the paranormal things, which I'll save for now, I guess, because I feel ready to talk about it, is that I feel that people have incarnations, and some people are not old spirits, and that's okay. Some people don't have many lifetimes on the earth. Some people have many, and some people have even many more that they even understand. And that I remember being this kid, like maybe even 2, having these dreams of these weird fantasy worlds, and it didn't make any sense to me. But as I meditated more and more and more and more and more, I asked to go deeper and deeper and deeper into my own, like, question my own spirit. And this is even before the fast, and this is even before meeting the elder and him telling me all this stuff. And there was something even after the fact with my mom that I'll just wrap it up with. But I went to a point where I would meditate for almost an hour and a half straight when things were the worst, because we had my wife and I have been through a lot of hardship. I mean, I've been through a lot of hardships, just life struggles, like everyone. We've been through a lot of hard stuff, and I always made a point, like, to just lean inwards, go inwards, because that's where you'll get your answers. You'll always find them there. And I made at one point, I went deeper than I've ever gone before in my life, and it was so deep and so profound that I was meditating one time, and I asked my own self. I got to a point where I was so into this meditation, whether this is true or not, I don't even care. I don't care what anyone thinks. This is the truth, what I experienced. But I asked myself, like, what do you call yourself? What's your name? I know I was given a spirit name by my elder, but this is before then. I asked myself this, and because I'm half native, half Italian, I was going to actually expect that I was going to say like Franardo or some weird Italian name guy that I was under that impression. Like, I don't know, just some kind of, like, not what I expected I heard. I asked, and my spirit said, your name is Seth. And I was kind of confused. That was the last name I expected. I did not expect that whatsoever. I just heard this name Seth. And I was just remember in my own mind going, Seth? And I had like this unquestionable, like, reassurance, like, yes. Then I was like, okay, I'm going to ask another question. It's like, how old are you? Like, my own spirit. I'm so deep into this. I'm like, how old are you? And I heard 934. And I remember I was like, years? Like, I was like, years? Like, I didn't know what it meant. I just see this number, and it just felt like the psychic stuff is like, you get images, and this was the image that I got, like this number. I didn't know what it meant. And then it didn't say years. I said, no, I said lives. And that's how it ended. That was the deepest I've ever gone. And then I was talking to my mom, and obviously the elder said stuff about like past lives and just deep, profound stuff. So there might be a connection with people who are, if you're aware of star seeds, you might have stuff being drawn to you because you're meant to serve, you're meant to share knowledge, and you're meant to go through hard experiences to get this knowledge. It's not easy. Some stuff you have to go through hard stuff. And if you're ready for it, not everyone wants to speak about it. And I've never said this to anybody. Whoever's listening to this, you're the first to hear it. I've only said it to my wife. I've never said to anyone. But it's time to start talking about stuff that might be hard. Because, there's hard times. And there's, people need to start digging in and start connecting on deeper levels. And I feel ready for it. I think other people are ready for it too. And, just listen deeply to yourself and trust yourself, and everything's in there always ready for you. And my mom says something super weird to me that I don't even know why she even said it. I was dropping her back off at home, and just we're having this conversation about aliens and like lizards, like lizard race stuff. And, we can go down the rabbit hole, but we're talking about some deep stuff. And she just looked at me out of nowhere, and I don't even know why. She just looked at me and said, "You're an immaculate conception." And I didn't know what she even meant. And I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "You," and she said it dead serious. And she's told me stuff dead serious, like the banging on the house stuff. She said something dead serious. She said some dead serious stuff. And she's a native woman that looks, when they look dead serious, they look dead serious. And she said, "You were again, sounds kind of crazy, me even just hear myself say it, but this is what she said to me." And that's where it ended. Maybe it's ET stuff that she knows that she doesn't want to say nothing about. I don't even know what it is. But that's what she said, and perhaps she was just goofing around with me. I don't know why she would joke with something like that. It's a messed up thing to say to someone. The truth is, really, I got hopefully a long life ahead of me to find out. And even if I don't find out this time around, there's many more to come, right? So that's my paranormal experiences, and that's everything up to this point that is worth talking about that's happened.
If you've had a paranormal experience and would like to be a guest on the show, please contact us by going to myparax.com. That's myparaex.com. Thanks for listening.